Hey all, today I'm going to show you how to find a property to flip or invest in and refurbish. I'll be showing you how to use websites such as Rightmove, Zoopla and On the Market to find those properties. And if you stay until the end, I'll tell you and give you some top tips of what you should refurbish and what you should leave. Now let's get into the video. First up is the search criteria. We want to make this as detailed as possible and starting with inputting your location. I always advise trying to invest within 30 minutes of where you live because you know the area best and you know which roads are good and which ones are more rough and which ones are the most desirable. Next up is property type. This is obviously up to your individual preference and requirements. Some people only like to invest in houses, whereas others prefer to invest in flats. Some may even prefer to invest in motorhomes or boat homes or any of the other types of properties listed on the websites. We should also consider the number of bedrooms and property price. You always want to try and find a property that has the highest number of bedrooms in your price bracket. Typically, properties with more bedrooms are more desirable and therefore sell for a higher value than properties with a lower number of bedrooms. However, it's also worth remembering that square footage or square meterage is very important. People don't typically want to buy a property with a large number of bedrooms if the property itself is very small. Square meterage or square footage is usually the deciding factor, and properties with a much higher size will often sell for more than properties with a smaller size, regardless of the number of bedrooms. But of course, properties with a higher square meterage or square footage often come with the added benefit of having more bedrooms in them. You should also order the listing of results from newest to oldest. The best deals will come on and be sold fairly quickly. Therefore, you need to be paying close attention to these portals and be able to spot a good deal as soon as it comes up and go and view the property and make an offer. Typically, the properties that have been listed on the portals for a much longer period of time aren't a great deal. They're often usually priced at a much too high a price point or have got underlying issues at the property. Now, you may be asking, what should I look for inside the property to know if it's a good property to flip or invest in? Firstly, you want to try and find things that stand out as being unappealing to first-time buyers. Therefore, if it already has nice grey or oak effect wood flooring, it's typically not going to be a great property to flip because we can't add much value, and this is quite appealing to first-time buyers. We want to try and find something with like red or green or pink carpets. They're pretty gross, oily, grimy kind of stuff. First-time buyers won't like this, therefore we can add value and replace it with the really nice grey or oak effect flooring. Next up is the kitchen. If it has a nice gloss white, handleless design kitchen with a quartz worktop, it's probably not going to be the best because again, we can't add much value. We want to try and find the nice 80s, gross yellowy kind of colour cupboards with, the black edging, the falling off handles, bits and pieces like that, because we can add value and replace it with a really nice appealing kitchen that first time buyers will love. Next up is to check out the bathroom. If it has a nice floor to wall ceiling tiled bathroom with brand new appliances, sparkling clean silicone, again, it's probably not the best kind of property to flip because we can't really add much value. You want to try and find the properties that have, the gross green plasticky appliances or the pink appliances with some gross, mouldy flooring, or maybe not mouldy, but, dirty flooring that definitely need to clean, and some also, the silicone that's got the black bits on it and the mould that's already kind of there, but no real damage obviously to the ceiling because that could cost quite a lot to replace or treat. Similarly with the walls in the bedrooms and the kitchen and the lounges or living areas, if they're nice crisp white freshly painted, it's potentially not the best to flip. If you can find some dirty walls that have got some stains on, even better because you can add value, repaint it and make it very appealing. Now, what kind of stuff inside a property should I avoid? If there's any kind of damage inside the property or any structural damage or damage to any of the communal areas, this is probably best to avoid. The bill for this can rack up fairly quickly, and especially if it's structural issues, can take a lot of time and money to fix that you might not necessarily recoup by just doing a light refurbishment. Next up is to avoid any kind of significant leaks. If the owners try to paint over severe damp or mould, or if there's bowed ceilings to look like they can fall down any second now, this is again probably best to avoid. This stuff can be really pricey to repair or replace and can often eat into a lot of the profit that you could be generating. Next up is to avoid any evidence of any unapproved wiring or plumbing. This can be quite difficult to spot, especially if you're not a trained electrician or plumber, but any evidence of any exposed metal wiring or any botched tape jobs or any exposed plumbing can be a sign that it's not been approved. This can be very expensive to fix, and you might end up having to rewire or replumb the entire house if everything has been done by an unapproved contractor. It's also worth remembering not to let your imagination get too carried away. If you don't really like the layout of the property and you think it might be a great idea to move some of the walls or the water or the heating system or the electricity system upstairs into the loft or to create a new basement, might not be the best idea, because this could be very expensive and not add much value to the property. If you're trying to find a property to flip or to invest in, what should you look for outside of the property? Firstly, you should look for single paned windows. This is an easy way to add value because it will often detract a lot of first time buyers. Next up, you should look for algae that's growing on the outside of the property or maybe on the roof. This will detract and gross out a lot of first time buyers, but it's so easy and so cheap to clean off or to have removed. Just get a power washer and give it a spray and it'll be all gone. It's also important to look for a property that has healthy guttering or is in a good state of repair. If the property looks like it's falling down or a bit broken, it could be very expensive to fix, which could further eat into your profit margin. If you've enjoyed the video so far, leave a comment below about which other topics you'd like me to discuss in future videos. Alternatively, if you have any burning questions that you don't think I've answered so far, drop it in the comment section below. Next up is what we should avoid outside of the property. Firstly, and what I think is most important, is avoiding the yeah buts. The property might look really great, but it backs onto a motorway or a busy train line that has activity 24 hours a day. The property might look really great, but it's right next door between two corner shops or two takeaways or two busy stores, or it's even worse, it's on top of one of these busy stores. The property might look really great, but it's in a really rough area and two people just got beat up down the road last week. The property might have some great refurbishment potential, but it's a flat on the 4th floor of the block and there's no lift, so you've got to lug everything up and down the staircase every single day of your life. These are big yeah buts, where the property is great but there's a huge issue detracting you from buying the property. This can affect the value of the property by up to 30%, and therefore you might see a property on a few roads down sell for 200 grand, so you might think that your property could sell for 200 grand and therefore you might think you're getting a great deal, but actually this property is only going to go for 140 because it's right next to this yeah but. Now, what should you refurbish and what should you replace? This is often the same for flipping and investing, and to start with, I always recommend the visible things that you can see. It's always worth refurbishing or getting new cupboards and countertops. It's always worth refurbishing the flooring or upgrading the flooring to something that's really appealing. It's always worth refurbishing or upgrading the tiling or the bathroom appliances or the paint or the hardware such as doorknobs and light bulbs and light fixtures. These are the things that are very visible to a tenant or to a property purchaser, and therefore these are going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of investment. Next up, it's always worth repairing the important things. If there's any small leaks, these should be repaired and treated. If there's any damage, such as any small minor plasterboard damage, that should be repaired. If there's any plumbing or wiring issues, that should be resolved and make sure it's all safe for tenants or property purchasers. Now, what shouldn't you refurbish or what shouldn't you do? You shouldn't significantly change the layout of the property, such as moving walls, unless it will add significant value, because this can be very costly and take a lot of time. You also shouldn't over-improve unless it's in a very, very, very sought-after location. Therefore, you don't necessarily need to spend £80,000 on a new marble countertop from Africa, unless you're investing or refurbishing a property that's in central Mayfair or a very, very sought-after location. You can often get a nice quartz countertop for around £1,500 including VAT, or potentially a laminate countertop for much, much cheaper. But these countertops aren't quite as nice and could be seen as cheap by potential tenants or property purchasers. It's also important to remember not to have too much going on. You might think that a black and white chess tile pattern here with a mosaic tile pattern there with a plain blue tile pattern somewhere else might be a great idea, but it's often not. It's always best to be plain throughout the entire property and match and colour scheme throughout the entire property to match the walls, to the floors, to the bathroom tiles. This keeps it plain and simple and makes sure that there's not too much going on all at once. If you want to learn more about investing in property, then continue watching some of my other videos or subscribe to the channel and ding the notification bell so that you'll be notified when I upload a new video. Cheers.